Let's find out, if we can, what's happening in Warwick.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
A current deficit of $7 million and change, a projected deficit of $19 million. I mean, these are big numbers for a city the size of Warwick, and the answers coming from the administration are strange. So we're going to see if we can get a different perspective tonight from the city council president in that fair city, and we'll get to that momentarily. Nice to have you in. I'm sure that you recovered from the snow. We have, I guess, what do we have? Headlines and pictures. Do we have something that? Yeah. What is it? Who gets in trouble when they say 5 to 8 inches and 15 end up in my driveway? Who do I go to? Where do I file a complaint? Right? And you know, every year I keep saying, you know what? Okay, I'll buy the snowblower again, because mine blew like 5 years ago. And my wife and I keep saying, well, we're going to downsize and get a condo anyway. And then every winter passes, and my back gets more and more sore. Thankfully, the neighbor saw the old man struggling in the driveway today and came over and helped out. But I hope this is it. Holy cow. In the meantime, the president was in rare form. And it's interesting, because when's the last time we were able to see he's in rare form? Because he's always in rare form. This is rarer form at the CPAC convention. Get a load of some of this.
They're trying to take you out with bull, okay?
President Trump took the stage in Maryland looking to project strength after a week of domestic and diplomatic setbacks, using a tactic he says works for him.
You know I'm totally off script right now.
The president seemed to delight in scorching congressional Democrats.
Right now, we have people in Congress that hate our country.
He also mocked his former Attorney General, Jeff Sessions.
The Attorney General says, I'm going to recuse myself. And I said, why the hell didn't he tell me that before I put him in?
In addition, Mr. Trump expressed frustration over the multiple investigations into his presidency and his business dealings.
We're going to go into his finances. We're going to check his deals. We're going to check. These people are sick.
The president's bad week began with blistering testimony to Congress from his former lawyer Michael Cohen, which opened up other avenues of investigation, including efforts to get the president's tax returns, ask the Trump Organization's CFO about hush money payments, and potentially interview one former Trump associate about the Trump Tower Moscow project. The White House also faces a Monday deadline for memos related to Jared Kushner's security clearance.
Okay, the heat is on. Congress is now in full throttle with the Democrats calling for hearings that very much spread their interests out, and they're going to put the hammer down. But, you know, as I was thinking about the president and what he was doing there, he has been in such overdrive the entire time that he's been elected that it really has overwhelmed the political system. Like, the media and political system has been overwhelmed by his full court press, which is kind of defensive offense, right? But here's the truth. The criminal system is never affected by this stuff. The political system is. The criminal system is not. What's interesting about what Congress is going to do now, what the House, I should say, is going to do right now, is that their effort is a hybrid of criminal prosecution tried in a political system. Even though the president's numbers for support are still hanging in there, this road between political and criminal is going to go like this and like this still. So be aware, just be aware, there's a big difference between the two. Let's come home to Warwick and talk about what's going on here. Fiscal woes seem to be the headline, and this wears down on a city. This wears down on the quality of life. People don't want to see this over and over again, hear about it over and over again. The new mayor had a State of the City address the other night where he chronicled some of the episodes with the fire department and the like, and then when asked by Eyewitness News about accountability, well,
Shortly after I took office, 2 more issues related to fire collective bargaining agreements came to light. The first side agreement regarding sick time payouts entered into by the former union president and fire chief took effect in 2013 without council approval or ratification. A second issue was then brought to light regarding the discrepancy on how unused vacation time was calculated for payout. The calculation that the fire department has been using was more generous than what was ratified by the city council. Once these issues were reported to me, I immediately halted these practices.
I am not pointing the finger at former Mayor Avedisian or anyone else at this point. Many times in an administration, you rely on members of your administration and the information they provide to you. If you did not knowingly know about these activities, then I'm not going to cast a negative shadow on anyone.
Well, the city council president is here, and I'm not asking you to speak for the mayor. Welcome, by the way, Steve.
Thank you for having me.
Can you make sense of that answer? What does that answer mean?
Well, I think that, and I don't want to put words in the mayor's mouth, but what the former mayor Avedisian is saying in many of these cases is that he didn't know what was happening with some of these department issues. I think, as the mayor had mentioned, Mayor Solomon had mentioned, we found over close to $1 million in expenditures that weren't authorized, and Mayor Avedisian's response was that he didn't know about it, that it must have been staff. And I don't want to put words in either of their mouths, but that's what I think he was talking about there.
How does that happen?
So it's supposed to come before the council for a vote, and we had
it being
in this case it was MIS, which is computers, communication equipment, and we had some significant concerns. We held the items. That department had received about $1 million last year, and they came before us asking for $800,000 more, and we basically held that, and they circumvented the process through a system called vouchers, and the council didn't know about it, and this administration didn't know about it until the accounting practices went into effect, and they learned that items were overspent in the previous year's budget by close to $800,000.
So this is the ordering at Cox Communications, and Cox is not a problem. They took an order and they put their equipment in.
Correct.
But this is a new story over the weekend. This is something that I guess came from the state of the city, but it's kind of a new saga. We've been following this firefighter thing, and we'll ask you about that. But how much of this, I don't know who did it, I don't know who ordered it, I don't know who decided it, I don't know who spent it, is going on in the city of Warwick right now?
Well, as you know, when the mayor...
You got a $7 million deficit that you got to cure by the end of the fiscal year. How you do that, God knows. You're looking at 19 in total for the next fiscal year. 800's, 8% of it. I mean, what?
So, your initial question was this blame game, and
I'm not really trying to play the blame game. I'm trying to figure out how this stuff happens.
Yeah. Well, the former heads of departments abruptly left after Mayor Avedisian decided not to finish his term as the mayor and take a job at close to $200,000 a year with an $80,000 a year pension going out the door from Warwick. So 2.5 weeks before we have to vote on a budget, we don't have the chief executive officer and we don't have the finance director that put it together. And everybody sits there and wonders, gee, how did this happen? What happened? Well, if you don't have the information, you're probably going to end up someplace else.
Well, your tone in suggesting that he's doing well at RIPTA and is carrying a pension with him indicates to me that that's a way of assessing that you're not happy with the former mayor.
No, I think that he could have waited and he could have put his budget in, and he didn't have to jump to take this job, which I realized was in his best interest, but it certainly wasn't in the best interest of the city, the citizens of the city.
So he put a budget in and left.
He put a budget in and left. Sitting around the table. In particular, you talk about the schools, and told the school department, no problem, we'll fund that. And then in his budget that he gave to us, he completely unfunded it.
Which would, what the it being?
$4 million worth of raises. Completely unfunded it. Said, well, you know, I anticipate there's going to be savings because they're closing 3 schools. We looked at it, we increased it, and it turns out, as we're in these discussions now, they're claiming they're about $4.9 million short. But it certainly would have helped if the chief executive officer decided to be present. I don't think that he works at Ripter at night. That's when our meetings were. He could have come back and explained it to us. And his finance director resigning 2.5 weeks before we're examining a $330 million budget. I mean, I've never seen that happen.
All right, when we come back, we'll explore that question and also get to this firefighter saga that has also been challenging the city. Stay with us.
Avedisian admits in our interview there is such an acute crisis in municipal budgeting these days, he's had to trade tomorrow for today.
I mean, think about it. You have, every time you hit a bad budget cycle, it is, I need relief from where we are today, and that's how you end up getting additional holidays, additional benefits, additional perks, because there's no cash to give out that time.
Did you think you had leverage a year ago in February, or did the unions have more leverage?
I think we had more leverage the last time.
And were you satisfied with what you extracted from that contract?
We wanted more, but it got us to where we needed to be to balance our budget for last year.
That was Jim Hummel's report in 2010. Do the math on that. The philosophy is something that I would challenge Scott Avedisian on all the time, which is, listen, if you don't have the money, you know, benefits end up costing money. But you were, as the city, you've been a city councilor for 20 years.
Correct.
There's been a philosophy of kick it down the road in Warwick for a long time.
Yes.
How much responsibility do you take and the council take for this?
So when these contracts came up, I voted against all of them. I think I also provided you with some of the testimony that I was giving with regard to pensions. The Hummel report is something that I had that I forwarded to you folks. But this issue back in 2010, 2011, where the pension actuaries came before us, they told us that in 2013 our pension contribution would be $14.3 million. It would jump up in 7 years, in 2020, to $24.2 million. And then everybody wonders why there's a fiscal crisis, and the mayor, Avedisian, leaves conveniently a year before the bomb hits, and now we're in the next budget cycle, and everybody's like, well, gee, I thought we were in great financial shape. All you have to do is go back and look at the actuary reports, listen to my comments during the budget season, and everybody said, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Other members of the public didn't know either.
So look, you know, this is hard to tackle on a television program.
Sure.
Because you've got 20 years of clinical knowledge, and you've watched the ebb and flow of this entire thing. But there's been a kick the can philosophy. You in the city of Warwick are struggling with what every major city in this state is dealing with, and that is health benefits, which are completely unfunded right now. You are paying as you go. Know that, like pension programs, the unfunded, the other post-employment benefits, you'll see an acronym called OPEB in these reports. That's health benefits. They're supposed to be financed in the same kind of fiscal way that the pension payments are. Your unfunded liability for both is out the wazoo. You're paying for this as you go in full every year now, correct?
Well, we are paying what's required for that year. So, for example, I think
for the expenditures
for the expenditures for that year was about,
not for the investment for that year to make sure that the program is solvent, but for what is coming in that has to go out.
Year after year after year. That was completely. This has been going on for well over a decade, and we can't raise taxes enough to pay just for the OPEB. So, for example, 2 years ago, our annual required contribution was $23 million. The actuaries make the assumption that we're actually going to pay that, And then the next year it comes back and it goes up by another $1 million. The most that we can raise in taxes is a little over $8 million with a maximum tax increase. Forget all the other services we provide or contracts. So it's not funded and it can't be funded. It needs to be restructured, and that's why the mayor called this meeting on the state of the city, because we need major restructuring of these agreements.
Listen, with your unfunded liabilities on the pension and OPEB side, you're going to have to find state help. This is not resolvable by the city of Warwick by itself. The city of Providence can't. That's why they're trying to sell the water supply. This thing cannot be resolved by yourselves, and so you guys better get to the outside conversation. Start really lobbying the legislature and other cities to form some kind of a help group, because this is a system problem.
Absolutely.
Okay, so talk to me about this accounting, though. There's an audit that's been done. This YKSM company reportedly has a couple of audits that are pending. The mayor lied to me on the radio months ago about his knowledge about this audit going on with this company, which is why he won't come here, because he lied to me. He doesn't want to stand up to the lie that he told. Never mind this passive-aggressive game that he's playing. What's the status of those audits?
So
I understand they're done.
Well, that's not accurate. They're not completely done. And as you know, we keep finding, every time we turn around, a new issue pops up. Sick time, vacation time.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the next segment.
Sure.
The little firefighter saga that's going on,
right,
that might be part of an FBI investigation. We'll get to that. But reportedly, well, look, you can continue to audit and audit. At some point, you have to say, listen, that which we came in to do is now completed, and issue a report. When is that report going to be issued? So
this is a great question. Okay, so right now, because Mayor Solomon stopped the payments on some of these, in my opinion, illegal schemes where contracts were written and the city council never approved them. We're in litigation now on that, and as you mentioned, there's possibly, an FBI investigation. So I don't know that those reports would be released until after a litigation is completed, and in the process of litigation, assuming they were completed, because they're work product for a litigation. So I'm an attorney. I understand you've probably come across this issue before. But when you have experts that may testify in a hearing, the other side may get one crack at the apple. And I think they're great questions. That's what we're working towards. I think.
Who authorizes the release of those audits?
Well, it's underneath the purview right now of the city council. So we hired that company. I can tell you, as I did before, that they're not completed, and I told you the reasons why. I would say that even if they were completed, I would be hesitant to release them because we're in the middle of a litigation, and I don't think it would be helpful.
Listen, you're a lawyer, you're smarter than me on this stuff, but I've been around the pike a couple of times.
Yes.
You ordered the audits in good faith.
Correct.
You wanted to find out what the condition of the city is. You consider anybody can sue you anytime. Anybody can sue you anytime. So just put the audits out, and let the truth win the day. You can't sit here and be rope-a-doping over the idea that the firefighter union is going to sue you and litigate over a couple of issues.
No. I don't think.
Well, who else are you worried about suing you?
No, my issue is from the standpoint of litigation and what's in the best interest of the city, as far as when you're in an adversarial situation with the fire department. But as I said to you before, we may come out and release those.
Steve, you got to release those. You should release the reports because you ordered them in good faith to see what the financial condition of the city is. That the fire union may sue you, they are suing you.
Yeah.
That the fire union is suing you is, it's all arm's length transactional, litigatable stuff. Just let the people know what the status of the city is.
I understand what you're saying, and when they're completed, we may well do that. But as of right now, they're not completed. And
are they 90% done, 95% done, 99% done?
I wouldn't give a percentage, but I can tell you that information from the fire department was not forthcoming. And I think other members of the public had told you that too through Freedom of Information Act. And it's presented a problem. And the other problem that we're experiencing is some of those documents were destroyed.
Okay. When we come back, I'll remind you about the saga that we're talking about. And then stay with us. Yeah. So here are three headlines that kind of are part of schemes 1, 2, and 3 with the firefighter union that the city is plagued by. There's vacation sick pay. There's sick pay. There's vacation pay, and then there's this crazy little deal where medical exams were budgeted, taken out of the budget, but money was spent for them anyway. They were unnecessary, and it all seems that some kind of rogue process has occurred where contracts that were either not approved or amended never made it back to your body, the city council, to say yes, go. And over time, citizen Rob Cody,
last four schemes,
who you see there,
you got a fourth, right?
Got a fourth. Turn the sound down on that one.
As we've talked about.
Whoop, there it is. Well, that was Rob. He's brought a lot of this to your attention, and you guys, to your credit, have followed up on this. You have yourself a real situation with this fire department, and this is what may be the motivation for the FBI to be smelling around. I got 20 seconds here. What's your take on all this real quick?
The take is that they signed an agreement and didn't bring it before us and then paid out the benefits, and the previous administration knew it.
You're not going to wait for an outside investigation to resolve this matter, though?
No, but I don't know what an FBI investigation is going to entail and what they might be doing, but it's simultaneous.
Have you talked to the feds? Have they talked to you?
Yes, they have. Yep.
Okay, well, that's another show. Mr. President,
thank you.
Final word when we come back. Listen, the city's citizens of Warwick really ought to pay attention. It seems like the city council, and to a certain extent the mayor, are operating in good faith here. I'm glad the city council president showed up. He seems to be clear on what some of the issues are. The mayor, I think, is clear, but handling this in a very murky fashion, and it's not happening for you well, and you should hold him accountable for that. I'll talk to you tomorrow at 3 on WPRO. Thanks very much for tuning in. Appreciate it.